Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Donati again, and today we are going to look at performance enhancing drugs. I felt this is probably one that maybe a lot of people haven't really talked about, and or the subject matter hasn't been really looked at or investigated. I feel this is a real important one because there are so many students out there that are either trying to perform their physical conditioning or how they participate in sports or how well they do in sports. So we want to really look at performance enhancing drugs. And we're going to look at four parts to it. So, as usual, first of all, what are performance enhancing drugs? Performance enhancing drugs, PEDs as they're known, are substances, chemical agents, or procedures designed to provide an advantage in athletic performance. Performance enhancing drugs affect the body in different ways, such as enlarging muscles or increasing blood's oxygen carrying capacity. Despite these apparent benefits, the use of such drugs is considered both competitively unethical and medically dangerous. Most performance enhancing drugs are outlawed by organizations that govern major amateur and professional sports. So, for me, as an example, when I would go to a weightlifting meet, um, 17 times I was drug tested that they would take and test me to make sure I wasn't using any illicit drugs. And at the time, if I would have been banned for 3 years from my sport. There have been organizations in the past, like Major League Baseball, that kind of turned a blind eye to this. And you had players that were using illicit drugs like cocaine that weren't suspended or really they kind of, I don't want to say encouraged it, but they turned a blind eye to it. All right. And for me, I took a personal stance that I wanted to make sure that I was doing things legal and I was fair, but I had to make sure that if I was going to compete at a very high level, I needed to make sure that I was eating right and exercising and reducing stress and sleeping right. So we'll look at that, and I'll give you hints to what I did as the semester progresses. So the first one we want to look at is anabolic steroids. This is probably the most popular and well-known PED. Anabolic steroids were first discovered to promote muscle growth and enhance athletic performance in the 1930s. Since the 1950s, anabolic steroids have been used by bodybuilders, athletes, and others to improve performance and enhance cosmetic appearance, meaning it's going to help them look and achieve a more ideal body image. Um, if you notice at the start of this particular slide, there were steroids were used to help muscle growth and enhance athletic performance in the 1930s. In particular, people that had muscle problems and other kind of disabilities, steroids were meant for that. What's happened a lot of times with drug use, and it doesn't necessarily have to be PEDs. It can be anything from stimulants or other kind of drugs. People that are using it to get an unfair advantage against other people are the really bad people. And again, there's a point of you're kind of deceitful when you're presenting things or using things. So again, I always try to make sure that was always clean and make sure that I never use drugs to enhance my performance. Designer steroids are another version of anabolic steroids. And basically, these are steroids that are designed not to be detected by a drug test. Classic example was Andro in the 1990s. Andro became very popular. Athletes were using it. The FDA hadn't tested it. And so it basically was allowed. What came about was the FDA tested it and it was pulled. A thing we need to take back and talk about just real quick. When you look at the word anabolic, anabolic basically means muscle producing. So there are things out there that have steroids in it, like ointment that would help, like a bee sting, or let's say if you come in contact with poison ivy. Those type of steroids are not anabolic. What we're focusing on is anabolic, things that produce muscle. Basically, what are some of the short term effects of steroids? acne, rapid weight gain, increased blood pressure, insomnia, headaches, increase in muscle size, and swelling of the feet. What are the long term effects? Blood clotting, heart attacks, heart, liver, and reproductive organ damage, premature heart attacks, increased chance of injuring ligaments, tendons, and muscles. What happens a lot of times is the muscle will become so strong that the ligament and tendons basically don't develop as fast. And for some athletes that use steroids or anabolic steroids, is they'll have muscle tears, and then it has to be surgically repaired. The next one we want to look at is human growth hormone. Human growth hormone is a hormone that has anabolic effects. Again, it's going to help produce and increase athletic ability and muscle size. Athletes take it to improve their muscle mass and performance. HGH, human growth hormones, are also referred to as HDH, is produced by the pituitary gland, spurs growth in children and adolescents. It also helps regulate body composition, body fluids, muscle, bone growth, sugar and fat metabolism, and possibly heart functions. We'll look at more at human growth hormone. We get into our um, basically reproduction unit, in particular with the endocrine system. Possible side effects of HDH: nerve, muscle, or joint pain, swelling due to fluid in the body's tissue, carpal tunnel syndrome, numbness of the skin, high cholesterol levels, increased risk of diabetes, and it can contribute to the growth of cancerous tumors. The next one we want to look at or focus in on is blood doping. Blood doping is misuse of certain techniques or substances that increase one's red blood cell mass, which allows the body to transport more oxygen to muscles, therefore increase stamina and performance. Basically, what your red blood cells do is they'll carry oxygen, and then they'll bring in, or they'll get rid of, or they'll take carbon dioxide back to the lungs. We'll exhale, we'll inhale, and take in oxygen. And for a normal person, we get a certain amount of oxygen with every beat of the heart. But basically, what happens is people, if they increase the red blood cell mass, meaning they have more red blood cells, their oxygen levels will improve. And so the stamina and performance will also improve. There are three widely known substances that are methods used for blood doping, namely EPO, and that is basically a chemical that increases your red blood cell red blood cells, synthetic oxygen carriers, and blood transfusions. Each is prohibited in athletic competition. The last one we want to look at is diuretics. These are commonly known as water pills. These drugs help your kidney get rid of extra water and salt from your body through your urine. Diuretics are used for extreme weight loss by some athletes. So there are sporting events that would have a weigh-in like MMA, and I'm not saying all MMA athletes are using diuretics, but there are athletes out there that will use diuretics, weigh in 48 hours prior to an event, and then all of a sudden when they come back 2 days later, they're maybe 30 pounds heavier. Diuretics are very dangerous. And some of the diuretics also include amphetamines, which is a form of speed, which we looked at in the stimulants that increase our metabolism. So, as a rule of thumb, you should never, ever, ever use diuretics. Just make sure you're eating healthy and exercising, and don't worry about your weight. On a final thought, keep in mind that performance enhancing drugs used by people's favorite athletes, these people need to remember the starting point of those athletes. Uh, Many of the professional athletes are, in terms of starting point, are way up here, whereas the average person is much farther down the list in terms of their performance, athletic performance. Um, The average person then would look at if they would want to be or emulate maybe one of their favorite athletes uh, by using a certain drug. The chances of them getting to that level is very, very slim. The bottom line is when you're exercising or you're doing sports, you want to do it for the love of the sport. You want to enjoy competition, but you don't want to get to the point where you cheat. And that's what a lot of people have done in the past is they've cheated, and unfortunately, it's cost some athletes basically their livelihood. So my point to you is don't cheat or do things that are unnatural or really put your body at risk. With that being said, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the show.